You've arrived at Adventures in Dreamland. Soft, surreal, and slightly cheeky sleep stories with awe and wonder. I'm Serene, your guide tonight. Whether you're here for sleepy science, surreal dreamscapes, or stories that shape who you're becoming, I'm grateful you're here. I write these stories to help you drift and grow. Each night, you're welcomed into a dreamy space from across the world. I'd love to know where you are and what makes your space extra cozy. Running a story cabin in the clouds isn't free. The greatest gift you can give to support my work is sharing our adventures with a friend. Now, we return to what we are. Every living organism on this planet, no matter how small or complex, wants the same thing. Every action we take is for this one thing: to avoid pain and obtain bliss. Bliss is a state of endless joy, mixed with peace beyond our knowing. Whether you call it the soul, awareness, or your highest self, that part of you, during deep sleep, temporarily withdraws from the body and the conscious mind and returns to the freedom and unity with the divine. Bliss without awareness. This restores not just the body and mind, but our spirits too, offering a sense of inner peace and clarity. So yes, sleep is sacred. You are returning back to your natural state. Freedom. Your story begins. The Amazing Life of Ants is episode 9 and second in our Dream Wonders playlist, where we appreciate fascinating facts in our world of wonder. It's a shimmering summer afternoon, the kind where the sun makes even the shadows yawn. You find yourself standing in a field of dry grass, heat dancing in the air like soft ripples off a mirage. A light breeze brushes past, carrying the smell of sun-warmed earth and wildflowers, and for a moment, everything feels a little too beautiful to be real. At your feet, an ant pile. Not just any ant pile, though. This one seems to hum with a presence. It's alive in a way you can't quite explain. And then you hear it. Oi, up here. No, down here. Goodness, the scale of you. You blink, then squint. A single ant, waving one of his legs like he's hailing a taxi. You're just in time. Before you can ask what for, you feel it. A strange fizzing warmth spreads through your toes, bubbles up your legs, wraps around your ribs, and zips right up to the crown of your head. It kind of feels delicious, though. Shrinking. Everything is growing taller. Or maybe you're just... Nope, you're definitely shrinking. Your arms wobble. Your legs tremble. And just when you think you'll fall over, plop. You land gently on your bum, now no bigger than a grain of rice. Perfect. Much better. Now you're ready for the tour. I'm giving you an exclusive underground tour of my home. You might call it an ant pile. We call it the city below. You stand, brushing off your knees. Do ants have knees? The world looks impossibly huge now. A single blade of grass curves above you like a jungle tree. You always wanted to feel like that movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. A piece of dirt is now about 3 feet tall. The ant walks to you confidently. Hello there. You may not have noticed me at first. I'm rather small, 6 legs, 2 antennae, and a to-do list longer than a centipede's scarf. The name's Crumb. Crumb the ant. Crumb adjusts a tiny leather tool belt slung around his middle, outfitted with what looks like the world's smallest hammer, a spool of silk thread, and something suspiciously like a crumb-sized crowbar. And yes, I shrank you. How else could I fit you in? Mind the pebbles, and whatever you do, don't lick anything, especially the shiny stuff. You follow. As you approach the entrance to the pile, Crumb leans toward you with a twitch of his antennae. Before we head in, one thing to know. I live in a colony of over 100,000 ants. We ants don't exactly use name tags. We use smell. Everyone in the colony smells just right to us, like family. Anyone who doesn't, he wiggles his antennae. They don't get past the front gate. Crumb picks up a tiny bottle, shaped like a perfume sprayer, and gives you a generous spritz. You don't love that he sprayed your face with it, but it tastes like sweet grass after someone's mowed and smells like it too. The entrance looms before you now, a perfect hole in the earth, dark and mysterious, rimmed with soft sand and the faintest scent of sweet soil. Crumb pauses, ready to go underground. You take one look back up. The sun is shining so bright, it's like an up-close spotlight. You nod, ready to get into the shade of the colony, and together you descend into the city below. The first step down feels like entering a new world. The tunnel walls curve smoothly around you, warm and earthy to the touch. Grooves in the clay feel like fingerprints from the planet itself, pressing inward, holding the shape. Crumb marches ahead. It's a bit tight at first, he says, glancing over his shoulder. But don't worry, I had them widen this path just for you. You duck instinctively, though there's nothing to hit your head on. The air grows cooler with each step. The scent of surface grass fades, replaced by something deeper. Damp soil, mushroom bark, maybe even toasted barley? You'd swear you smell soup. A soft glow appears ahead. Crumb's holding up a tiny lantern made from what looks like glowing lichen, threaded into the husk of a dried out seed pod. Found this on a mushroom raid last week, he says proudly. Glows for hours. Smells like peppermint if you lick it. But again, please don't. The tunnel widens suddenly, walls smoothing out into something more deliberate. You step into the welcome chamber. It's like stepping into a bustling subway station. If everyone in the subway were polite, very small, and wearing no pants. Ants scurry past in tightly coordinated trails, some carrying tiny bits of leaf, others shouldering seed crumbs, or strands of grass. One zips past with a ball of fluff 4 times his size. "Coming through," he chirps. Crumb speaks. "As you can see, we're not all identical. I'm a worker ant, proudly so. But even in my group, there's variation. Some of us scout, some forage, some guard the entrances, and others tend to the young in our nursery chambers. There are other kinds of ants too. You might see fire ants. Fiery, yes, but mostly just misunderstood. Then there are carpenter ants who love a good chew through old wood. Pavement ants who run sidewalk real estate, and sugar ants. Well, I think you can guess what they're into. Me? I'm a black garden ant, classic, reliable, and always hungry. The walls gleam with packed, polished clay. Overhead, air flows steadily from a narrow shaft, like natural air conditioning. Crumb gestures grandly with one leg. This is our front room. Not too bad for a pile of dirt, right? You smile. It's more than not too bad. It's beautiful, complex, alive. Crumb leads you toward a branching hallway and points as you walk. "Those tunnels?" he says, nodding toward the left. "Airflow and flood control, designed for max efficiency and 0 soggy antennae." You nod solemnly. Nobody likes a soggy antenna. He turns his lantern toward a row of sealed chambers along the right. Storage, seeds go in those, winter fungus in that one, emergency chocolate crumb. He pauses, squints at the chamber. Should be in that one, unless Marvin's been snacking again. You don't know who Marvin is, but you already like him. And that hallway, Crumb adds, lowering his voice to a whisper, leads to the nap nests. If you breathe too loud near the nap nests, you'll get 46 ants clicking their jaws at you in perfect unison. It's unnerving. You both tiptoe past the hallway out of sheer respect. Crumb leads you down a new tunnel, this one wider, with bits of petal and grass lining the edges like a patchwork rug. Next stop, the nursery. Prepare yourself. It smells a bit like mushroom yogurt and warm laundry. You're not sure what you expected an ant nursery to smell like, but that sounds weirdly comforting. As you step into the nursery chamber, the air thickens slightly, humid but cozy. The walls here are soft and pillowed with bits of chewed bark and silk. Ants move gently, almost reverently, around small clusters of pearly white shapes. Crumb pauses and bows his head. These are the larvae, the future, the squiggly dreams of the colony. A nurse ant waves politely with a leg as she adjusts the temperature of a larva bundle using a sun-warmed pebble. Crumb points at her. She's rotating their beds so the heat distributes evenly. Very advanced technique. We call it flipping omelets. You nearly snort. Crumb gives you a serious look. Caring for our young is sacred. We feed them by mouth, clean them, even sing to them. Well, vibrate to them. It's like a spa day, but every hour. One of the baby ants squirms and flips dramatically. Crumb sighs. Ah, that one's going to be a handful. He guides you out with a gentle wave of his lantern. Now, I don't know about you, but talking about larvae makes me hungry. You trail him down a passage that smells distinctly nutty. A small sign comes into view, scrawled on a bark scrap in blackberry ink. Café Crumb Est. Last Tuesday. You enter a bustling chamber that somehow resembles a cafe. If cafes had beetle shell booths and seed shell stools. There's even a bar where ants order small crumbs and carry them off like prized trophies. Crumb tosses you a sliver of something crispy. Try the burnt butter bread, toasted on a sun-baked rock this morning. You take a bite. It's oddly perfect, like sourdough, but made from dreams. We're big into seeds, he explains, pulling up a stool. Sunflower, sesame, grass, and fungus. Oh, fungus is huge down here, not the spooky kind. Ours is farmed, fresh, locally grown, organic, probably. An ant behind the counter rings a tiny bell and shouts, "One honeydew droplet on moss crisp, crumb beams. Ooh, deluxe." You lean back, warm and full, surrounded by the gentle murmur of ant conversation and the scent of roasted grain and sugar sap. You never expected an underground bug cafe to be this cozy. Back in the hallway, Crumb turns down a tunnel that smells faintly of pine needles and rain. As you continue walking, Crumb leans in like he's about to share a secret. Now you're probably wondering how we find anything out there, how we talk without talking, you know. You nod. That had occurred to you. Well, he says, tapping one antenna, this right here is the trick. Antennae. They're our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, all rolled into one elegant wiggly noodle. A tap here, a brush there. It's like Morse code with your face. He demonstrates with a flourish. When we find food, we leave behind a pheromone trail. Basically, invisible smell messages. One whiff of the right trail, and every ant nearby knows where to go. We produce pheromones using special glands near our abdomen, Crumb explains, brushing his middle with a leg. It's a kind of chemical ink. We paint trails with it, invisible to the eye, but absolutely mouth-watering to the right antennae. Yes, we can smell with our antennae. You imagine traffic signs made of perfume, and it weirdly makes sense. Sometimes, he adds, we get creative. Wiggle patterns, speed of movement, each means something, like follow me, or danger ahead, or I found cinnamon toast crumbs and I'm not sharing. Crumb bumps antennae with another passing ant, and you hear a strange high-pitched bzzzt in your head, like a tiny electric violin. Oops, Crumb grins. Didn't mean to send you that one. That was my urgent pie craving signal. This is the forager's wing, he says. My favorite place for stories. You pass clusters of ants polishing their mandibles and adjusting tiny leaf satchels, preparing for their next journey above ground. Crumb stops beside one with a weathered look and a slight limp in his front leg. This is Bristle. Legend says he once dragged an entire pretzel twist half a mile solo. Bristle nods. Sourdough, sea salt, 2021. I still dream of it. As you continue walking, Crumb explains that foraging is a bit like treasure hunting. Ants memorize the landscape, leave scent trails, and sometimes even debate routes by wiggling their antennae in committee meetings. Foragers are bold, creative, and slightly obsessed with burnt toast. Everyone's got a weakness, Crumb admits. Mine's crystallized honey on cardboard, irresistible. You follow a tunnel that begins to slope upward, the air getting cooler and sharper. Crumb points toward an alcove with high ceilings and narrow crevices. Ants with oversized mandibles stand alert, wearing tiny polished armor made of beetle shell and mica flakes. These are the guardians, Crumb says with quiet respect. They protect the colony from invaders, mostly other ants, sometimes wasps, occasionally lost lizards. One of them nods solemnly and waves a spear made from a cactus spine. A mural carved into the clay wall catches your eye. Ants in rows, standing firm against a shadowy swarm. Crumb nods. It's not all sugar and snacks down here. We've had to fight for peace, but we always rebuild. We always care for each other. That's what makes us strong. He glances at you and smiles. Plus, we do look amazing in beetle armor. Before we move on, you might be wondering, do ants like water? Well, we respect it, only in moderation. Too much and, well, tunnels don't hold up well. But we do sip morning dew like fine tea. A cool droplet on a summer day is like lemonade after lawn chores. But too much? A flood? That's a disaster. You ever seen a sugar ant try to swim? It's more panic than grace. We design our tunnels to breathe and drain so no one wakes up soggy. Crumb glances over his shoulder and wiggles his antennae proudly. Now, let's meet the neighbors. As you walk, he gestures to ants passing by in tidy streams. Fire ants, he whispers. Hotheads, but loyal to the core. Just don't tease them unless you want your ankles to regret it. Two burly ants march past with glowing red thoraxes, nodding politely. Carpenter ants, he points next, as a duo strolls by carrying toothpick-sized wood planks. They built half our support beams, brilliant at renovations, terrible at singing. A line of speckled brown ants shuffle past with tiny boots. Crumb leans in. Pavement ants, urban experts. They once mapped an entire sidewalk crack system in under an hour. Efficiency legends. Then he grins, spotting a giggling group trailing sticky leaves. Sugar ants, he says fondly. Sweethearts, literally. If you've got honey, you've got company. You can't help but smile. And me? Crumb strikes a pose. I'm a black garden ant. Basic, sure, dependable, always. A real catch, if I do say so myself. Crumb slows his pace as the tunnel floor begins to slope downward. The air shifts, cooler, smoother, tinged with something sacred. both step into a vast chamber, and everything changes. The light glows from the walls themselves, softly pulsing with amber warmth. The ground is smoother here, swept clean and lined with petals, moss, and pale silk. Ants move gracefully, with quiet reverence, as if walking through a temple. In the very center of the room rests a figure so grand, so still, that for a moment you think she might be carved from stone. But no, she breathes. Her body is massive, her color a deep velvet brown, with a shimmer like oiled wood. Around her, a circle of nurse ants tend to her gently, brushing her limbs, adjusting soft bedding, and carrying tiny translucent eggs to nearby alcoves. Crumb bows his head and speaks barely above a whisper. This is Queen Magnificentia. He pauses, letting her name hang in the air like incense. She's not our boss, not exactly. She's more like the heartbeat of us all, the beginning and the ongoing. She doesn't shout orders. She simply exists, and we know what to do. A nurse ant approaches with an egg no bigger than a raindrop, cradled in a scrap of cotton fuzz. She places it tenderly at the queen's side and bows low. She can live for decades, Crumb continues, his antennae trembling slightly. She remembers floods we've only heard about, droughts, wars, chocolate bar discoveries. She lays the future every day, and we don't bow because we're forced to. We bow because we're grateful. You stand in silence, watching the queen's sides rise and fall with the slow, powerful breath of someone who is both ancient and beloved. One of her antennae twitches, and you swear she just nodded at you. Crumb leans in softly. Not everyone gets invited here, but I thought you'd understand. As you begin to leave the queen's chamber, you glance back one more time, still awed by her presence. Crumb walks beside you, quiet for a few steps, then says softly, "You know, I came from one of her eggs." You look at him, surprised. "She's your mother?" He chuckles. "In the technical sense, yeah, but don't picture bedtime stories and hugs. Ants don't really do parents the way you do. She mated once, long ago during a special flight, stored all the ingredients she needed in a little pouch inside her, and then she's been laying fertilized eggs ever since." He taps his abdomen with one leg. "That's how I came to be. Just a little egg she chose to give life to. A nurse ant raised me, like all the others. I never met the drone whose contribution helped make me. Don't even know his name." Crumb pauses, gazing at the glowing walls. "But that's kind of the magic. We're not raised by parents. We're raised by purpose." He touches a nearby wall with one leg. "The whole colony is the parent. We're raised by 1,000 caretakers, shaped by scent and touch, taught by example, and held by purpose." Then he smirks. "Although, if I had to name a dad, it'd probably be Marvin. He's old, grumbly, and always tells us to stop running in the tunnels." As you and Crumb begin making your way out of the queen's chamber, something shifts. He pauses at a fork in the tunnel, tilts his head, and taps his antennae together with a frown. Left at the pollen pantry, then right at the sleepy stone, or straight past Marvin's emergency snack nook and left at the acorn lid. He turns in a slow circle, sniffing the air like someone trying to remember where they parked their beetle. Well, he says at last, we might be a teensy bit turned around. You glance down the branching tunnels, each one smooth, dimly glowing, and absolutely identical. Crumb chuckles. Ant colonies can stretch hundreds of feet underground, with dozens of entrances and rooms. Ours might not be the biggest, but it's still got more square footage than a suburban mall. He spins in place once. That's the problem with being efficient. We're very symmetrical. As you wander, Crumb keeps chatting, the way someone does when they're slightly lost, but trying to play it cool. You asked about ants like me. Black garden ants like yours truly usually live just a few years. Workers like me might make it to 5 or 6 if we're lucky and avoid floods, predators, and disco accidents. The queen, of course, well, you saw her. She's practically eternal. He sighs fondly. Our role? Honestly, ants are nature's janitors, seed spreaders, soil churners, tiny engineers of balance. We clean up the leftovers of the world, aerate the earth, snack on the chaos. We're like the midnight crew at a never-ending party. You nod slowly. It's strangely beautiful. We don't get much attention, he adds, but that's okay. The world runs smoother because of all the things you don't notice. Suddenly he perks up. Wait, I know that scent? He zips down a tunnel, motioning you to follow. Moments later, light begins to filter in ahead, golden, blurry, and shimmering. Crumb scurries toward it, triumphant. You're going to love this exit, he calls over his shoulder. It's got the best morning light, smells like chamomile and sunburnt grass. You climb after him, rising slowly toward the world above. The tunnel narrows, then opens, and just like that, you're blinking in the bright glow of the surface. The air smells crisp and clean, and the ant pile hums gently behind you. The field stretches wide and golden in every direction. It feels like stepping back into a half-remembered dream. Crumb turns to face you, brushing dust off his tool belt. Well, he says, that about does it. He pauses. If you ever forget anything I showed you down there, just remember this. We're all small things, doing big work in the quietest of ways. He raises one leg in salute, and never underestimate a creature with a good crumb and a great plan. Before you can thank him, that strange tingling sensation returns. A soft fizz bubbles through your toes, then your chest, and wraps around the top of your head like a cozy steam rising off warm tea. The world around you stretches and shifts. The grass blades that once arched above you, like trees, now fold downward. The ant pile shrinks to a soft mound. Crumb, waving from below, becomes a tiny dot. Oh, And if you're wondering how we find our way down there without lanterns, ants don't really see in the dark. Our eyes aren't so great. We mostly rely on our antennae to smell our way through trails, signals, even moods, all picked up by scent. It's not eyesight, it's insight. Then everything blurs, and when it clears, you're in your own bed. The weight of the covers is gentle, the pillow familiar beneath your cheek. Somewhere in the distance, you imagine the faintest scent of toasted bread and sun-warmed earth. A crumb, perhaps, tucked beneath your pillow. You smile, and so, as you drift off, perhaps you'll dream yourself small. 6 legs, a steady rhythm of work and rest, and the deep satisfaction of belonging. You're always welcome here. Just follow the scent trail. Good night, dreamer. Sweet dreams.